have to wait until it says webinar.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Attorney Bernard Wolfsdorf, and welcome to the third of our four-part series on the EB-5. Oops, I can't count. This is only the second of our four-part series. Our third one will be on January the 8th, 2013. Thank you all for logging on today. Oh my gosh, we have hundreds and hundreds of people. We are almost close to our limit. This is wonderful. I'm thrilled to have you on board. My name is Bernard Wolfsdorf. I am a certified specialist in immigration law, and my little claim to fame is having been the past AILA president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Involved in this four-part series is we have four individuals, all specialists in their particular arena. We have Mr. Brian Sue, President and CEO of the Artisan Business Group. If you're interested in understanding marketing and distribution, you really need to log on to this website because Brian is the absolute guru. Brian has been very kind by providing slides today, but he is actually speaking at another conference in Rhode Island. So Brian will be skipping online participation, but we're going to be discussing his slides. Mr. Michael Gibson, Managing Director of usadvisors.org. That's the website to log on to. These two websites, absolutely amazing information on EB-5. And here's the good news. Mr. Jor Law, my good friend and business and securities attorney, I must confess and disclose, he's my attorney as well. So he is absolutely superb in the area of business and securities law, and Jor will be commenting on various aspects of today's program. So thank you all again for joining us, an absolute pleasure. In case you haven't worked it out, I'm just using up a little bit of time because I see more and more people logging on. So I do want to just give these folks a few minutes to join our program. So if you haven't logged on, you can go to my website, www.wolfsdorf.com, and you can log on immediately and sign up to program number 3, part 3 of our series, which will be a more advanced and in-depth program. These are all on Pacific time, so that's on January the 8th, 2013. And then on part 4, we're going to focus on setting up regional centers, how to actually go through the 924 process. That will be in February. And we will also be scheduling additional webinars as the year goes on. So I want to also give a very, very big plug today for Mr. Brian Sue, who hosts the EB-5 Summit and Exposition in Shanghai. That is on March 15th to March 18th. If you've never been to Shanghai, now is the time to go. This show is absolutely amazing. You will have, I had the privilege of attending last year. You see all the major regional centers, the Chinese migration agents, and of course, most important, the investors themselves will actually be participating. I mentioned, and he will be on our next program, Mr. Michael Gibson, the Managing Director of U.S. Advisors. And when it comes to undertaking due diligence on projects, Michael Gibson is the absolute guru and the person that you want to discuss and review as to which projects to discuss. And of course, as I mentioned, last but not least, Mr. Jor Law, you can go to his website at HOMEIER law .com, or just Google EB-5 Jor Law. Not a difficult name to remember, L-A-W, EB-5, and you will find Mr. Jor Law will come up, and Mr. Law will be live with us today on this particular program. So what are you going to learn during this program? During this 3-part series, you are going to acquire critical knowledge regarding this red hot program. And remember, you can log on to your chat column, and we are expecting you to be asking your questions. So just click on to the little chat function. I believe it'll be on the right-hand side of your screen. And this chat function is currently open. Type in your message, folks. We do want to have questions, and I'm going to try and answer all of your questions. You know, a paid consultation, I'm going to make fun of Jor a little bit, but he's going to get me back. You don't want to know how much a paid consultation with Mr. Jor Law could cost you. And now, today, you get it all free. So log it on, and you're going to get one of the top specialists in the securities arena who's going to be able to answer all of your questions. And I, Bernard Wolfsdorf, will be available to answer your questions. I can be reached at any time. My email address is my name, bernard@wolfsdorf.com. I'll give my firm a little bit of a plug here. We have 17 lawyers, almost 50 employees, offices in New York and Los Angeles. So we're going to be talking today about, oh my gosh, more and more folks logging on. Thank you for joining today. For those of you who have just logged on, I'm just using up 1 or 2 minutes to make sure that everybody who wants to will be available. As most of you all know, the wealth creation that's going on in China and Taiwan and Korea, basically in Asia, is quite amazing. And what's driving this program more than anything is the desire of parents to educate their children at top schools in the United States. I recently saw a statistic that foreign national education is the industry of over $20 billion. $20 billion, folks. That's a lot of money of folks coming to educate their kids in the U.S. And the EB-5 program is one of the very few options that is available to high net worth individuals who want to invest $500,000 into a regional center or into a standalone investment, and they are able to get green cards for their entire family. So also done correctly, if one invests in the correct investment, they may actually be getting their money back, and maybe with a little bit of interest. Of course, I won't be providing any financial advice. I am not qualified to do so. I will be talking about immigration risk and what the concerns are that one should look at, because there could be nothing worse than putting $500,000 or $1 million into an investment only to find not only that you lose the money, but you also get your green card. No fun at all, folks. So as I mentioned, Brian Su is traveling today. Michael Gibson's in China, but we do have Mr. Jor Law here. While I'm basically waiting for you all to log on, I just wanted to share some interesting statistics with you, just as a way to get the government recently released statistics for the fiscal 2000 year program. Now, the fiscal 2000 year program actually ends on September 30th. September 30th. So we're just a month or so into the 2013 fiscal year. We're already into the 2013 fiscal year. So the 2012 fiscal year, which ends on September 30, we had a total number of applicants in the program of 6,678. 6678. Now remember, I'm a lawyer, which means I'm not good at math as a rule. You'll excuse my bad jokes, but you know, we're trying to have some fun here. So 6,678 applicants for this program last year, almost double, head over heels from the previous year. For the statistics for total receipts for 2011 were 3,805, so pretty much double. Now, let's do the math on this, folks. Remember, one visa for each applicant, so most people who apply have a family, so you can probably average about 2.5, 2.3, if you want to be nice, 2.3 people per application, which certainly gets you over 10,000 limit. And what this means is that there is going to be, in the second quarter of next year, a backlog, a waiting line. Now, of course, we don't know this for sure because it hasn't happened until it's happened, but for those of you who are dealing with Chinese nationals, it is very, very important to make sure that you provide realistic expectations for the timeline in terms of processing the green card. And what is the current timeline? Currently, I say about a year to a year and a half from the time you've submitted your money and put it into the program. Number two, my speculation is that the waiting line for Chinese applicants could climb till 2 to 3 years. Those of you who want to learn more about this, please go to my blog or my website, and you'll see I just did a blog on the impact of these numbers on folks who are waiting in line. So let's talk about statistics and approvals. In 2012, fiscal 2012, the program had an approval rate of approximately 80%, actually 79 to be precise. And many of you who are optimists like me are going to say 80% is a very good statistic. Here's my problem, folks. That also means 1 in 5 are denied. 1 in 5 denied. I actually believe we're going to have a whole lot more because the number of cases filed, the 6,000 that have been filed, 6,041 filed in fiscal 12, unfortunately, the numbers actually adjudicated and approvals were only 3,000, I can't read the number, but it's under 4,000 approved. So what does this mean, folks? 1 in 5 are denied. That means 1 in 5 people putting their $500,000 are not happy. Now, many of them may get to reinvest, but it's still a pretty high statistic. Now, let's move over to the 924. I'm going to explain the two-part procedure when you get a green card through the EB-5 program. As with marriage, you get a conditional green card, and then 21 months later, after the grant, 90 days prior to expiration, you have to file the form to remove the conditional nature of the green card application, the so-called I-829 application. Now, the denial rate here is almost 10%, 1 in 10. So you say, well, that's not too bad, 1 in 10. Yeah, but let's start factoring this in. We got 20% denial up front. We got 10% denial at the tail. Don't average those out for me or expect me to do that. I'm not that good at math. But the bottom line is when these 924s get denied, these poor people get put into deportation. Deportation, did you say, Mr. Wolfsdorf? Yes, I certainly did. Hey, by the way, if I talk to myself a little bit, please laugh. We've got to get through this topic of EB-5, and we're going to keep going, and by the end of the series, you're all going to be experts. Now, remember, you've got your chat column there. I don't know if I'm not pressing the right buttons because I'm not seeing the questions coming up. So let's talk a little bit more about the program. The program, very interestingly, China, mainland China, Asia is pretty much where all of these cases come from. 70–80% of the applicants are from China. Number 2, South Korea. Number 3, Taiwan. Number 4, Iran. Number 5, Great Britain. Number 6, Mexico. Number 7, Venezuela. Number 8, India. Number 9, Russia. Number 10, Vietnam. Number 11, Canada. Number 12, the Netherlands. Number 13, Japan's dropped way down. Turkey. My native South Africa, if you haven't worked out where I got this funny British accent from. Oh, there are a lot of questions. Does Mr. Law feel that it is allowed for... Jor, I hope you can read these questions. Start reading these questions. Jor, does Law feel that... is allowed? Okay, so here's where we're going, folks. Let's get moving. I think we've given more than enough time for everybody to log on. Let's get on to our start. And these slides, oh, what a pretty dragon. The Chinese word is Yung. So what an amazing dragon. I mispronounced it. My Chinese tech is telling me he doesn't like my pronunciation of Yung. This is the year of the dragon, and there we have our wonderful dragon. And what am I doing with this slide? I am giving a plug to the Artisan Business Group, Mr. Brian Stu, because if you log on to his blog, you will learn everything that is right. Now, he gets into the job of advising which is the right project to invest in. I will not do that. I am an immigration lawyer. I will only advise you on the issue of immigration risk. The person who will advise you on which projects to get into are people like Mr. Brian Su, the absolute expert there at eb5newsblog.org, and also, of course, not to mention the very, very competent Michael Gibson, who is also capable. Now, another little plug here, 2 events. This is Brian Su's program, his EB-5 Finance Seminar that he's launching for next year. But the one that I plug at, because I'm going to be speaking there in Shanghai again, I spoke this year, is the Invest in America program. Folks, if there's one expo and exhibition you go and you want to have a lot of fun, this is the one to go to. Invest in America, and that is absolutely the place to be. Now, let's talk a little bit about what are your reliable sources for project information. Work with a reputable U.S.-based immigration attorney. What? Hey, folks, I did not do this slide. This is what Brian Hsu said. You want to work with a reputable U.S.-based immigration attorney. Gee, where am I going to find one? Gee, you know what? Maybe I am one. I like to claim that I am one. Of course, you know, calling yourself reputable isn't very helpful. You kind of need other people to do it, but that's what we aspire to. Let's move on. Point number 2. Joe, I'm not going to ask you to comment on that because I don't know what your answer will be. Contact EB-5 regional centers or project developers. That's a reliable source of information. How many regional centers are there? Well, there's about 242 when I last checked, listed on the USCIS website. You just go to the USCIS website. Remember, folks, if it doesn't end with GOV, it's not the United States government. There's so many websites out there designed to make you think they look official, but make sure they have GOV. So USCIS.gov is EB-5, and just Google EB-5 USCIS, and you'll get to their website. They will list all the various projects. Attend EB-5 investment exhibitions and conferences. Do I like this slide? Well, kind of yes and maybe no. The problem here is they're not mentioning my webinar series. So the other way to get reliable, oh wait, it's about project information. I won't give you project information. So you've got to go to the investment exhibitions, conferences. Retain a trustworthy EB-5 business consultant. I think Mr. Brian Hsu is referring to himself, and I would tend to agree with that. Work with a U.S.-based registered securities broker-dealer. Well, that would be Mr. Michael Gibson. That is a registered securities broker-dealer. So, Mr. Jor Law, you're live there. What did I just say, and what's your comment about what I just said? Yellow.
It's very important. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. You're a little bit louder. What do you think about reliable sources for project information? Your words of wisdom, Mr. Jor Law.
Yes, definitely. You know, in reality, there's folks that are licensed to do this, and then there's folks that aren't licensed but know their information. In all cases, it's much safer to go to someone who's licensed and approved to do these types of activities. But
Joel, I'm going to criticize you. I'm going to criticize you. There's probably thousands of people who are licensed out there to do this kind of thing. My experience is there's only a handful who really know what they're doing in the EB-5 arena. What's your comment on that one, Mr. Jor Law?
That's correct. There are a lot of people that say they know how to do EB-5 or that they have experience with EB-5, but in reality, there's only a handful of immigration attorneys, brokers, you know, investment advisors, securities attorneys, economists, etc., that know how to do EB-5. When you're looking for the right EB-5 person to help you determine how to do EB-5 or what to invest in, it's very important to get an understanding of what they've actually done, and don't be afraid to drill down and ask for not so much proof of what they've done, but ask questions to make it so you can understand if they've really got as much deal experience as they claim that they do.
Well, that may sound pretty self-serving, but I have to tell you, Jor Law is the real thing. There are projects out there right now with $100 million plus capital raises, and who's the securities firm who's working on that? None other than Mr. Jor Law's firm. So these guys are the serious players handling major, what I call mega projects right now. Let me be silly for a second, Jor. What is the largest project that you've handled in terms of dollar number raises in the last year or so?
Oh, geez.
On the spot.
I'm not even sure.
Well,
there's one actively. There's one we're working on now that's about $200 million.
Ooh, that's staggeringly big numbers. Isn't that too big, $200 million? I mean, you're going to need 400 investors just to close that single project.
Well, in that one, you may need 400 investors.
Yeah.
You know, if you're approaching EB-5 correctly, you've got the right team, the capital raise actually may not be that bad. There's a lot of regional centers out there that never end up raising even $20 million. a $200 million raise, that particular raise might finish within 6 months.
Oh my gosh. So properly marketed, you could raise $200 million within 6 months. And here's the man, Mr. Jor Law, working on exactly these kind of projects. And we're looking at 400 investors. Oh my gosh. You know, that is huge. The projects are getting bigger and bigger, more sophisticated. Okay, so let's go on. We're talking about reliable source of project information. We're using Mr. Brian Sue's slide. There we've got a very, very handsome Leon. I can't tell whether that's male or female, but I guess it makes no difference if it's in China because a Leon is a Leon. Okay, so excuse me being a little bit silly from time to time, but that is my style. So you're stuck with it for the next hour at least. You can criticize it online by using your chat column. I have had one person comment that I made too many jokes in the past, but apparently it didn't stop me. So let's keep going. Things to consider. Now, this is Mr. Brian Sue, Artisan Group, telling us about the things to consider when you are making a selection. So what is the developer's track record and background check? So is this developer on this project somebody who's never done it before? Are they reliable? What is the developer's equity or cash in the program? Meaning, quite simply, for those of you who are experts, how much money is the developer putting of their own? You know, I was talking last night to a developer and they said, I'm interested in this EB-5. We finance all of this ourselves. We don't even use bank loans. And I'm like, wow, this one looks like a good one. Okay, what are the project's realistic development plans? What is the overall capital stack structure? I am not a financial guru. I'm merely an immigration lawyer. But the question is this. If you're going to be borrowing, if the initial loan on the project is say $400 million, and that's bank money, and then we're going to bring in $150 million of EB-5 money to retire some of that debt, you know, where are we in line? How are we going to get our money out? What is the capital stack structure? That's like one of those tongue twisters, capital stack structure. We'll have Joel comment on that some more. Economic impact. Oh my gosh, I can't overemphasize this particular point. The big issue today is job creation. Job creation. Remember, folks, everybody thinks of this as an investor project, but oh no, no, no. This is an economic impact job creation project. And perhaps even more important today is what is the job creation aspect of this particular. So if we look at a project, I want to know, what is the job creation cushion? Do we have a 3-to-1? Do we have a 2-to-1? Do we have a 1-to-1? So do we have enough jobs being created with the econometric models and the job count such that we have a huge cushion of comfort? So if we've got a 3-to-1 job count, this is starting to look good now from an economic, scratch that, from an immigration risk perspective. Exit strategies for investors. Well, we have our two basic models. We have our loan model. We have our equity model. And the question is, which one is going to be better in terms of getting the money back, in terms of after the investment is completed, after the individual's got their full green card, is the person going to get their money back? What sort of return? How secure is it? And just a sort of interesting little tidbit here, there are currently something like almost 250 regional centers. I can't give you the count of how many projects there are, probably 20 to 25 with active projects at any time, but there are only, I repeat, less than 10, only about 10, I don't want to say less than 10, only about 10 regional centers that actually have 829 approvals. That means they finished it, made it all the way to the finish line, because this process takes about 5 years. So of the active programs, it's only about 10 that have actually got a track record all the way to the finish line. So tell me, Mr. Jor Law, what are your comments about my comment? Will you comment on my comment, and then I'm going to comment on your comment?
Yeah, I think generally a couple of things to understand. Of course, remember that the project information is only as good as whatever information has been been given to the person communicating it to you. So to the extent that you're doing your diligence, you'll also want to take a look at the materials yourself and really understand them and make sure that a consistent picture is given to you between your immigration attorney, your agent, or et cetera. So I think the key there is to diligence properly and understand a couple of the items that you should definitely look at. For example, as track record, they're indications, but only as past successes. Normally, I wouldn't have mentioned this, except for we're starting to see some people who have been extremely successful in EB-5 in the past with excellent programs, but they're getting a little bit bold in their offerings, and some of their new offerings may not be as of high quality as an old offering, and vice versa. Someone who may have had a not such a great offering in the past may have a offering that truly is a good offering now. So,
well, Jor, I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't agree with you anymore. But you're the guy who's preparing these private placement memorandums. That's the securities arena. You're the absolute expert. So, you know, it's only as good as the information that your clients give you. But presumably, it's also you're going to push your clients to provide the correct information. And I really like your second point. It is correct that many of the established programs had formulas, for example, which were heavily reliant on things like tenant occupancy. And tenant occupancy, the big 900-pound gorilla, or was it 800-pound gorilla? The big gorilla in the room is that it impacts so many of these programs, and yet some of the new programs that are coming on the market are designed on a very conservative basis to ensure that they don't run into problem with the immigration. So I get your point about some of the projects at the moment are appropriately structured to ensure that we are dealing with some of the problems that immigration has presented us with that have resulted in terrible delays. I mean, there are regional center applications that have been pending almost 2 years. I was meeting with someone yesterday, the immigration, they had an immigration case pending over 1.5 years from the time they filed the I-526. Oh my gosh, almost gridlock in the program with slow adjudications because the government is currently looking at some of the aspects of this program. Now, many of you may have been on the telephone call with Director Mayorkas, the director of the USCIS, and in this program, we were all waiting for, oh, is he going to give us the answer on tenant occupancy? And oh, no. What did we get instead? What we got was the fact that the EB-5 unit is actually moving from the California Service Center off to Washington. Well, that's great. Okay, 90 to 120 days. By the way, I have full confidence in our director. He is amazing, committed to the program. But this is a very complex program. If those of you who have time to read my latest blog on the topic, my question is, maybe moving it's going to fix it, maybe it's not. I see it causing potential delays. What we need from headquarters is we need regulations, we need directions, we may even need some new statutes, and we need clear guidance because it's been over 20 years, repeat, 20 years since the regulations come up. And we need clear guidance, the developers need clear guidance, the lawyers need clear guidance, the adjudicators need clear guidance, and we're waiting for headquarters to do it. So hopefully that will happen soon. So I cannot agree with you more, Mr. Jor Law, that the points you made are absolutely accurate. And any other comments on things to consider at this point, our little slide, I don't know what number this is, slide 5.
Yeah, typically, you know, there's a couple things to understand. You know, if you're someone raising money, you know, the pro formas, you know, the projections you do are reasonably flexible, and the economic models that you do are reasonably flexible. On the other hand, if you're someone investing in these deals, you also have to understand that the business models that they come up with for the financial projections or the economic model that they use may be reliant on some inputs that could dramatically vary how safe the project is. It's very easy for me as a developer to throw in a line item here, a line item there, and make it look like what I want it to look at. So it's easy to look at that. The other thing is loan models in the U.S. Are generally safer in the sense that in the U.S., when you have a loan, your interest as a loan holder is generally superior to that of an equity holder. However, just because something is a loan model doesn't mean that it's definitely safe. A lot of these structures have a loan that is pushed back pretty far in the cycle and in essence acts as equity. So like all investing, you know, everyone that goes out and sells their securities, they'll say this is a great investment. In EB-5, they may say that, you know, it's extremely safe. But as an investor, you'll have to really understand, you know, is this a company or is this a stock that I really would want to invest in?
So this is what you're talking about. Thanks, George. So this is what you're talking about when you say capital stack structure. Where do you stand in line? You know, after the project fails or goes belly up, and you know, if you're in the back of the pack, you may not get your money back, and worse still, if the project fails, you may not get your green card, which is kind of scary. So it's a double loss. Please, folks, due diligence, due diligence, due diligence. If I said that enough times, due diligence, and that is due, D-U-E, not D-O. Do due diligence. Boy, I'm coming up with tongue twisters today. Do due diligence on your capital stack structure. Say that 10 times after me, Jor. Do due diligence on your capital stack structure. Hey, I've got an 8-year-old kid, so, you know, what can I do? I get stuck with these kind of jokes. You know, I come up with, like, really silly jokes, Jor. Here's the one my 8-year-old gave me last night. What does a dog say when he sits on sandpaper?
What?
Rough, rough, rough. That was really funny, Bernie. What relevance has it got to this particular program? Absolutely nothing, but I just thought it would be a good joke. Rough, rough, rough. The simple bottom line is be careful with EB-5. The program could be rough, 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 and you'll find yourself sitting on sandpaper. Hey, did I link that correctly? Let's move on to the question of investor fees, because I don't know if that joke really worked. One of you is laughing. Okay, move on to the investor's fees. This is a very, very important issue. The project subscription fees should be fully refundable if not the investor's fault. So, you know, if there's fraud or something in the application and the application is denied, then we understand that. So if the applicant has done something wrong, then we're talking about the foreign investor who's done something phony, then maybe they shouldn't get their subscription fee back. Subscription fees can run $40,000, $50,000, so they should be able to get their money back if the project goes bad, and be able to get their $500,000, and they cannot get their first stage approval, the I-526. Attorney's legal fee service is paid separately. Yes, well, what can I say? You may not agree with this, but paying attorney's legal fees is a good deed, like helping little old ladies across the street. Paying legal fees to lawyers, a very good deed. Bernie, that one is not going to work. Okay, so we pay the legal fees separately. Government filing fees, quite substantial, folks, a couple $1,000s for the government filing fee. To register a regional center is $6,230, if I remember correctly. The highest of all government filing fees, at least in the USCIS. And then consulting fees on due diligence, that is paid to your financial advisor. Jor, any comments on investors' fees?
Not particularly. I think, you know, the fees for investors, you know, varies really depending on the countries that you go to. You know, there may be higher fees, you know, for someone that is doing a raise solely in China versus, you know, someone that's doing a raise solely outside of China. The reason for that is that there's a cost infrastructure in China whereby by the time someone's gone through and raised money in China, they've you know, had to kind of had several layers of payments that they've had to make. But in general, unfortunately, you know, the investors' portion of the fees have gone up over time.
Very good, Jor. Thank you so much. And just so everybody understands, you've got your basic $1 million investment. That is the requirement. If you are in a high unemployment area, or if you are on a TEA, that $1 million can be reduced down to $500,000. And then number two, you also, or if it's in a rural area, it's reduced down to $500,000. So let's start off here with our topics of discussion, our basics for today. We're going to go through the basics of the program. We are going to talk about what is now common called the standalone. I'm not sure if it's got a hyphen in between, but spell check didn't complain. I used to call it individual. That's not the right word. It's standalone or direct investment, and the regional centers and the difference in how these processes work. I'm going to talk about the timing flow chart, how this works from the time you put your money in until you get your green card, and then talk a little bit about persons for whom the regional center EB-5 program may be the best option, what type of customers are looking for this program. I'm going to talk about the advantages of the Regional Center EB-5 program. Basically, it comes down to one very, very, very big advantage, and that is that you can count indirect or induced jobs. So it's not only a direct job count, it's also an indirect job count. And then, of course, we've got investor due diligence. Have we spoken enough about investor due diligence? Remember my wonderful one-liner, do due diligence, DDD. Do your due diligence. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then advising on the business aspects of the process or not. Because I'm an immigration lawyer, I do not advise on the business aspects of the process. You have to hire one of the other specialists that we have on our series, or one of the other people that are out there that knows what's going on. The truth is, very few people know what's going on this very complicated program. This is a 22-year-old program, folks. It came in 1990, and quite frankly, it was on ice pretty much from 97 till 2003, 2004, when it picked up steam again. And now, of course, it's red hot. We're going to talk a little bit about individual petitions, the I-526 form, the I-526 through regional centers. We're going to talk about job creation issues. And then we're going to talk about the all-important issue of source of funds and path of source of funds. Folks, these are two separate processes. We go into some considerable depth here, but the source of funds is money. Source of funds is, quite frankly, where does this money come from? Prove to me that this is legal money. Show me the money. Show me where the money came from. And then, of course, the path of source of funds. We have to show where the money came from, directly from the individual who earned it abroad, how did they earn it abroad, and then we have to see the chain. They transferred it from their bank account in Shanghai to their bank account in Hong Kong, and then from their bank account in Hong Kong to their mother-in-law's account in Los Angeles, and then from their mother-in-law's account in Los Angeles to their personal bank account in Los Angeles, and then from their personal bank account in Los Angeles through to the escrow account of the project, so we can show a direct chain with the receipts and the deposits and everything, because we want to make sure this is legitimate money and not funny money or bad guy money or dirty money or smelly money, because now we're in the money laundering industry, and oh my gosh, we don't want to be anywhere near that one. So source of funds and path of source of funds, very big issues, seeing a lot of denials on those types nowadays. And then we talk about the 829 process, what kind of issues. Let's come up with another name for the 829 process. It's Judgment Day. Sorry, you know, I'm in Los Angeles here, and Arnold Schwarzenegger in his movie Judgment Day. This is when all the things happen. Sorry, I won't do the accent because I can't do the accent. You're stuck with my phony English accent. But here's the bottom line. The I-829 is when that is filed at the 21-month anniversary to remove the conditional nature of the green card. Once that is approved, then the full green card is issued, and the person is on their way to the home run, which is potentially becoming an American citizen. That's 2.5 years or so after the removal of the conditional. Bernie, you got me all confused. Too much information right now, but let's move on to the very basics of this program. So as I mentioned earlier, Congress created the program, EB-5 category in 1990. Didn't do very well. 1993, they enacted the pilot program for the regional centers. 10,000 green cards available each year in this category, massively underused, two types, individual and regional. 90 to 95% of these, by the way, I don't normally talk this fast, so I hope I'm not giving you a headache. I just have a lot of stuff to cover today, and I'm having too much fun, as you can tell. EB-5 is just so exciting. There's so much going on. So 90 to 95% of EB-5 petitions are now done through the regional centers. Hey, this slide's going to be out of date soon, because we are seeing a big shift towards direct or standalone investments, particularly with the franchisors diving into the arena. I hear Burger King is on the road, off to China, recruiting. So Burger King, how does that work, Bernie? Well, here's what Burger King does. They sign up some fellow, he puts $1 million in, they hire 10 employees, and the green card will be in the mail. How long is that going to take? About 1.5 years. Is that going to work? I think so. Why not? As long as they're legal workers, as long as they lawfully earn money. So suddenly we're finding all the restaurants, franchisors, everybody diving in. And why exactly are they diving into this program? Very, very simple, folks, because it is so hard to raise capital in the United States. Interest rates have never been lower, but getting capital, oh my gosh, this is not easy. So let's jump on to the next point. Current annual usages increased rapidly, more than double last year. Wow, what is he talking about? All right, there's a phrase you need to Google. It's called Visa Bulletin. Visa, V-I-S-A, Bulletin. That is the Visa Bulletin. And that will, if you Google that, you will find that the current Visa Bulletin projects Chinese fifth preference current under the employment category. But is that going to be the case next year? I predict no. Conclusion, previously underused, but maybe oversubscribed soon. Incorrect slide, Mr. Wolfsdorf. You need to fix the slide. It's not maybe oversubscribed, it's will be oversubscribed. So those of you promising your Chinese clients green cards in 1 year, you talk with forked tongue, F-O-R-K-E-D, forked tongue. That is, what can I say, not accurate. The simple bottom line is you better advise your Chinese clients at the waiting line maybe 2 or 3 years if they are now filing for green cards because of this potential backlog and if they're planning their lives. So, of course, Congress could do the nice thing. I'm very hopeful 2013 we're going to finally see CIR. What CIR? CIR is my favorite thing. I even have a little sticker on my briefcase, Comprehensive Immigration Reform. And here's the good news, folks. I understand that the EB-5 changes and bill will be in Comprehensive Immigration Reform. So when Congress gets about, moves forward and actually makes the changes, we are going to see some very significant changes in terms of the EB-5 program. Who knows? Maybe they'll increase the numbers. Let me speculate. Maybe they'll go up to 20,000. Maybe they'll assign unused EB-1 numbers to the EB-5 category. So simple bottom line. And by the way, that may impact subscription because visa numbers are very complicated. Unused numbers can flow down. Unused numbers can flow up. And something I recently heard, unused numbers can flow across. Let's not get into Visa Bulletin 505. That'll be for some future webinar. And by the way, those of you who are interested in our webinar series, go along to wolfsdorf.com. What a name to spell, W-O-L-F-S-D-O-R-F. Wolf like the animal, S in the middle, DORF.com. We have webinars pretty much 2 or 3 times a month. We're currently on our EB-5 webinar series. This is a 4-part series. We're in series number 2, and the third one will be on January the 8th. And I'm hoping my full team will be here, Brian Sue, Michael Gibson, and none other than Mr. Jor Law, securities lawyer and corporate lawyer extraordinaire. I do tend to exaggerate a little bit, folks, so please bear with me. This is not legal advice. I'm just giving you, having some fun here. If you want legal advice, you have to consult with a lawyer and with a security specialist. What we are saying today does not constitute legal advice and should not be regarded as legal advice. So let's go on to the basics here. Legislative status of the EB-5 program. The extension was recently granted in September, just 2 or 3 months ago. Congress extended the Regional Center program, formerly called the pilot program, for another 3 years. My prediction is they'll probably make it permanent, but here's the good news. It is being extended. Now think about this, folks. Congress has not been operating very efficiently and certainly not in a bipartisan manner. But there is one program that just has absolute support on all sides of the bench, which means we've got the R's and Republicans supporting big business, of course. We've got the Democrats supporting job creation. And, of course, we've got the president supporting both. So the simple bottom line is we have a program that Congress supports, and we are sitting in the right place at the right time. Yes, it's a 20-year program, but it's just starting to take off. So we need to create a new commercial enterprise. New commercial enterprise is defined in the statute as a business created after November 29, 1990. You must create at least 10 full-time jobs. This is a basic requirement. You have to invest $1 million in a targeted employment area defined as a rural or high unemployment area, rural 20,000 or less, outside an MSA, metropolitan statistical area, or high unemployment at 150% of the national average. But you know what? The governor has authority to declare PEA, so the whole of Florida, whole of Vermont, much of California, and the whole of Hawaii are, in fact, designated TEAs, so you're in pretty good shape. What's the procedure to get a green card? We'll explain this. You file your I-526 form, you wait 6 to 8 months, you get an approval, you then file your I-485 combined processing CP, and you apply for CPR. That's not what you get when your heart stops. You get CPR, conditional permanent residence. Okay, 526, file your petition, get your approval 6 to 8 months later, then you file your adjustment of status. 21 months later, 90 days before your 2-year anniversary, you file your 829, wait another 6 or 8 months, and then you get your green card. So wait, Bernie, translate that into English. That was a very funny language you were speaking. Is that something to do with your phony South African accent, your phony British accent? Because it didn't make any sense to me, so please help me. Hey guys, I talk to myself. I must have a problem. Here's my problem. I enjoy doing what I do. So simple bottom line with filing an I-526 is that start to finish is going to take about 18 months to process your green card. Maybe a little bit less if you're lucky. So if the person's waiting a lot abroad, and if you're Chinese, it could take 2 years, 2.5 years. So you know what? Simple bottom line is that don't overpromise in terms of timing, because we are seeing more and more RFEs along the way. So there's my little timing chart, EB-5 flow chart. I hope you can all read it. Number 1, research your options. Number 2, invest the required capital in the new commercial enterprise. Number 3, prepare and file Form I-526. Hey, wait. That's my job. I'm the guy who prepares and files the Form I-526. Then I file the case and it gets approved in 7 to 8 months. Government likes to say 6 to 8 months, but it could actually be longer. Then you can file to adjust status in the U.S. That'll take another 6 to 8 months. So if you're in the United States lawfully, I may do this in about 1.5 years. Or if you have to pick up your green card abroad, it takes 8 to 10 months. And then you get your approval of your conditional green card. Then you receive your conditional green card, so 10 to 18 months. 10 is inside conservative, 18 months more realistic. And then we go to the next step. 21 months later, we file the 829. You know, my chart looks good, but it's not actually as clear as I'd like it to be. 21 months later, we file the 829. Then that one gets approved. That takes about another 6 to 8 months. So now it's been about 3.5 years. Repeat, 3.5 years. Oh my gosh. Tell you the truth, folks, I just got an approval very recently for one of my clients. I called him up and said, congratulations, we've been approved. You've got your full green card. And instead of having a happy client, the client's like, that took over 4 years. Gave me a hard time. Well, yeah, I didn't tell the client 4.5 years. I didn't expect 4.5 years, but that case took a little bit longer than expected. So manage your client's expectations, and then about 2.5 years later, the person can become an American citizen. Be careful, folks. China doesn't allow dual citizenship, so they can't do it. But if it's another nationality, Canada or Britain, then they can, in fact, have 2 passports. So let's go back to our little timing chart. Bernie files the 526. 526 gets denied. Company, why would it get denied? Oh, well, it wasn't clean money, some problem with job creation, some sort of headache. What do? Find another way to get a green card or file an appeal. File an appeal on your 526. It goes to the AAO. Statistics of approval on the AAO are not good. Challenge it in district court. Those are all options that may be available to you. What else do you do if your 829 is denied? That is, let's just call it, you've got phase A, 526, and you've got phase B, which is your 829. Your 829 gets denied. What do you do at that point? Well, you could file another 526, make another $500,000 investment. Oh, yeah, you got a lot of money. Or number 2, you could file a motion to reopen. Or number 3, you can appeal the decision in a removal proceeding. Now, a removal proceeding really, folks, is no fun, but you go in front of an immigration judge and you argue your case, and that's how it works in front of an immigration judge. Again, not so much fun. So that is our timing chart, folks. I hope that is all very helpful. So let's jump over now to what I call standalone. We should change the caption here. It still says direct, standalone investment. And this is a situation where the investor places the required capital from legitimate sources in a new commercial enterprise or restructured or expanded by the investment. Ooh, I don't really want to go into the restructured or expanded, because even though you read this all the time in the statute, you cannot imagine how difficult the government makes it when you restructure an organization or you expand an existing entity. Not so easy. I like to have a new commercial enterprise, brand new startup. That's the focus that I move on when I do these cases. Detailed business and financing plan required for the enterprise. Repeat, detailed business and financing plan. Business and financing plan. You need to read matter of Ho. That's spelled H-O, the precedent decision on what's in a business plan. But you need detail. Absolutely important in your business plan. And that's another part of your team, which is the business plan writer. Enterprise must hire 10 direct U.S. employees, and those folks have to be legal folks. So if you hire one undocumented, if you didn't check, then that person is going to cause your application to be denied. So you may even want to register for E-Verify to make sure that everybody, because you may not even know that somebody presented fake documentation. So very few applications, but as I say, this is now changing. And then, of course, you still can make your investment in a targeted employment area, high unemployment area, or rural area outside an MSA, and then the amount of investment is reduced down to $500,000. Jor, you wanted to comment on some of the securities aspects. What do you have to say about direct or standalone investments, good sir?
Yeah, a couple things, but actually even before that, just remember there may actually be two business plans that you may need if you're setting up one of these things, because in reality, before you even focus on the jobs business plan, the folks that actually prepare those for you, they often will ask if you already have another business plan that you've already worked on. Obviously these are going to be helpful exercises for you to understand your own business anyway. So, from a securities point of view, and this is going to be applicable more for the folks that are raising the money, and then just a little bit for the investors who are investing, so they can understand what to expect, is in a direct or standalone EB-5 compared to regional center EB-5, whether one project is even able to use direct EB-5 often depends on just size considerations. It tends to be that smaller projects or strings of smaller projects, for example, a series of Burger Kings, it's going to be easier to do a direct EB-5 because $1 million may be enough to create all the jobs that, all the jobs that are going to be created may be enough to match $1 million capital raise or $500,000 capital raise. But on a larger project, one that may be raising $40 million or more, sometimes it's difficult to get the direct jobs in there. So by nature, a lot of direct EB-5s are smaller programs, typically. And when they are a small program, as the issuer, they may not end up having a PPM if it's a standalone project that's not being duplicated over several different other projects. If you're doing a series of Burger Kings and the same capital raise, you typically would have a PPM anyway. But if you're doing one restaurant with 3 investors, you may, as a developer, say, I'm not going to incur the cost of a PPM. So from an investor's point of view, that means you're not going to see this lengthy disclosure document, which has basically saved the issuer, the person raising money, roughly $30,000 to $50,000.
Let me be self-serving for you, Jor, but even in a direct or standalone project, I need to hire you as my contract and securities lawyer because there's still tons of documents that you need to do besides setting up the corporation and structure it. Give me a few lines on what type of documents are you preparing in a standalone or direct EB-5 case?
Yeah, definitely. In both a direct EB-5 and a regional center EB-5, you typically are going to have some sort of company agreement. In the larger EB-5s, it tends to generally be limited partnerships or limited liability companies, and there's some good reasons for that. And you'll need the company formation document. You'll need the operating agreement for the company. You typically need a subscription agreement, which is an agreement whereby someone says, I hereby subscribe to buy your shares. You'll typically need an escrow agreement because most of these capital raises, the investors go into an escrow, and after the I-526 application goes through, then the money gets released from escrow. You'll typically need a PPM, And this is true. Even in a direct EB-5, you should always consider having a PPM. Now, I wear a lawyer hat, and I'm ultra-conservative when I'm a lawyer. But when I'm not a lawyer, I skydive, I hike, I do very stupid and dangerous things. And if I'm not a lawyer, maybe for the small offering, I understand why someone might say, Jor, we don't want to pay money for a PPM. We're just going to take the risk. Heck, I might even do that myself. So that's one of the documents that,
well, Jor, I totally got that. Boy, from what I just heard, it sounds like the Jor Law Full Employment Project. There's probably going to be more work for you putting this thing together than there is for me. But the reality is that the immigration lawyer is the one who usually operates as the quarterback or the general manager, putting together the securities lawyer, the business plan writer, the accountant, all these different folks, the marketing people. It really is a team effort, and that's why I've had the privilege of working with several very competent people over a period of time, and I work with my own team. So let's flip over now. I'm just watching the clock and making sure that we get there. What exactly is a regional center? This is a designation with regard to a specific geographical area and also specific types of business enterprise. So you're going to apply on your Form 924 to have your regional center approved. Unfortunately, at the moment, most of the applications seem to be stuck, taking a year or year and a half. You're going to put together your business plan. You're going to apply for your regional center, and you're going to designate the specific types of industries. The government now wants more and more detail. It's supposed to just be a hypothetical project, but they want a hypothetical project with a ton of detail in it. So you need to put in very specific NAICS codes, that's N-A-I-C, very specific NAICS codes outlining exactly the areas, very specific business plans outlining exactly what it is that you plan to do, showing that the regional center is viable, showing that the projects are going to be viable, and then you're going to get your regional center approval on your Form 924. You're probably going to get 1 or 2 RFEs along the way. Now, as I mentioned, at the present time, over 90% of the programs are, in fact, going through the regional center program. So you'll have, a few regional centers, and then, of course, you have to look not only at the regional center and what their track record is, but you also need to look at the specific project. So you've got to kick the tires, not only on the regional center, but you've got to kick the tires on the specific project and make sure that that one is a good one. So a huge increase, approximately 226 approved. The number on the website is 240 or something like that, 250, but there's probably really only about 25, 30 regional centers with active projects at the present time. And the main advantage, of course, of the regional center is indirect job counts. But if we listen very carefully to what Mr. Jor Law said, there's also a danger in indirect job counts. Because with direct or standalone, you have your 10 regular employees, and gee, bingo, you put your $1 million in, you show clean money, you put your 10 employees in, bingo, you get the approval. But with this indirect job count, the government has been somewhat more restrictive in making sure that we don't have pie-in-the-sky assessments of whether or not we have real jobs being created. So the regional center can be a public or private entity. The state of Vermont, we see the state becoming very, very active. We have cities, municipalities, various other entities being involved in setting up and operating regional centers and then adopting specific projects within these regional centers. So I think, I'm losing my place with the slides here. Jor, you had something to say on slide 14. What is it, sir? Regional centers. Nope.
Yeah.
Securities
hello?
aspect. Security. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Jor,
yeah,
did I
yeah.
lose you?
You know,
I want you to talk about the securities aspects of regional center programs.
Right, definitely. In direct EB-5, it is possible that if someone is coming over and setting up their own store, not for it to be not a securities at all, so that the Securities Act largely doesn't apply. In regional centers, the way they're structured, they're pretty much all securities. So as an investor, that's actually a good thing for you because it generally means that there exists a lot of laws that the U.S. government has put in place to help protect you. as someone who's raising money, that's a complete headache because now you have to deal with restrictions on how you can actually go out and sell your securities and raise money because they don't want you to go out there and lie to investors. They don't want you to promise investors only the good things and not tell them the bad things. So typically when you're raising money doing a securities raise, there are really two rules: disclose and don't lie. So to disclose, typically they say, well, if you're going to sell, you have to register your offering. But then you may go to the government and say, oh gosh, that's really inconvenient for me to do. I'm just a small company. How can I afford to register this with the government? It takes too long. It costs too much money. And the government understands. They say, okay, fine. If you do it this way, and this way, then it will be exempt. So in EB-5, there's two common exemptions. One's called a private offering exemption, whereby if the offering is made privately or only to accredited investors, under the Jobs Act, then it could even be public, then it's exempt. If the offering is made only exclusively outside the U.S. to non-U.S. persons, the offering is also exempt. So there's different ways to tell you, okay, fine, you got to disclose still, but you don't have to register. The other thing is simple: don't lie. And don't lie really isn't that hard to understand, except for it's important to realize that lying also means omitting in a material truth. So if you tell someone, oh, this is going to be a great location, there's going to be 500 homes built right next to this plaza, and then that sounds good, but then you don't tell them that, oh, the 500 homes will have, this problem, and are not likely to be purchased, then they still to say that, by omitting certain facts, you've essentially lied, and they call that the anti-fraud risk. So those are the two key things to worry about when you're doing securities raises. You got to do them the right way for them to be exempt, and then you got to disclose all material information.
Sure, that's really helpful, and thank you for giving us that Securities Law 101. It's certainly very helpful for me to understand and for everybody else to understand. I found it very interesting that on the December 3 stakeholder call, when Mr. Mayorkas, Director Mayorkas, explained that he plans to move the regional center, scratch that, he plans to move the adjudication of EB-5 from California Service Center to the headquarters. One of the reasons he mentioned is because he's close to the Securities Commission, SEC in Washington, and the simple bottom line is that there are folks on loan from the SEC to USCIS immigration. There's been rumors of them hovering, rumors of SEC being involved, but it is very clear to us that SEC is looking at certain projects and certain practices at the present time, and one needs to be very aware. So that's one of the reasons why we have Mr. Jor Law speaking today about the securities impact of this program. Folks, be careful. Lying through omission, lying through commission, okay? Forgetting to include valuable advice is, in fact, lying through omission, and we need to be very, very careful of anybody who is doing anything along these lines. So very, very important. So as I mentioned, main differences, I'm going to run through this. Some of it is repetitive. Job creation, you can count indirect jobs. Number 2, indirect transactions, loans, etc. So this allows some sort of more passive type investment. We're not really allowed to have passive investments, but if we have limited partnership, and in some instances an LLC, then the regional center person is not that hands-on. And the project pre-approval, well, yes, technically you can file an exemplar, get a pre-approval. Doesn't unfortunately mean as much as we'd like it to mean because the government doesn't give full deference to these approvals. So regional center does not automatically mean 500,000. Very important to note that the amount is not automatically 500,000. The default amount is 1 million. You have to be in a TEA or rural area to get down to $500,000. There's the number. There's the statistics. Thrown that out before. Let's move on to number 16. Actually wants to start manage and control their business. So for those people who want to do direct or standalone, the businessman who wants, or woman who wants to control her money is going to run the business herself, whereas in the regional center, by definition, they're not going to really be involved in the day-to-day management. That is the key thing. Have to be involved in the day-to-day management of the company if it's going to be direct or standalone. So the enterprise itself will create 10 direct jobs. So there we are. We set up a Burger King. We hired 10 legal workers, and bingo, we got our green card. This is for people who want to maximize their profits. Now, here's the really important thing. I've had several people contact me. They want to set up regional centers, and I'm like, well, yeah, we want to open up restaurants in the following 10 states. And I'm like, 10 states? Oh, my gosh, that's too big. Maybe I could get a whole state. I don't even know we could get a whole state anymore, you know, like the whole state of California. So we need to set up 10 regional centers to cover all these different areas. Of course, one regional center could be multi-state and cover numerous states that are contiguous and close together. And the other problem with regional centers, it can take anywhere from, you know, oh my gosh, 18 months, 2 years or more to set up regional centers. So if you don't have that kind of time, then you may just want to go ahead and set up using the direct regional center. And I really like this term that he used. I haven't heard it before, where you have a string of investments. So you have Burger King that's offering a string of so-called standalone investments. So we've got a string of investments also requiring securities, and we're seeing a lot of string of investment type businesses coming on this market right now as the problems emerge with the regional centers, and particularly with issues like tenant occupancy, guest expenditure, blah, 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 blah. So where are we? Who else do we want to, who else are we interested in? Retirees, inexperienced people. Yeah, you can have a 90-year-old kid. He's not going to be able to manage that Burger King and, you know, really wants to just go to college. So that's a good candidate for EB-5. Somebody who doesn't want to start. So we've got someone from China who's made millions and millions of dollars. They just want to retire, enjoy the good life. EB-5 Regional Center is better. Or what if we've got a mother coming over with her kid going to college, really doesn't want to work, just wants to do parenting, make sure that kid gets straight A's, then that may be a good program. So immigration is the driving force, not the investment. And the reality is that the overwhelming number of folks in the EB-5 program see immigration as the driving force and not necessarily the investment. So let's talk a little bit about proof of job creation. I'm going to go pretty fast today because I want to answer most of your questions. Full-time direct program, only U.S. workers authorized to work, must create jobs within 2 years for the conditional resident. So this is a big issue. It's creating the timing of the job creation. So if we have problems, for example, getting permits on our project, and then the question is, when do the jobs actually get created? And then, of course, I mentioned this early, maintaining jobs if you have a troubled business that's lost at least 20% of its net worth in the past 12 or 24 months. Problems, again, problems in the job counts. I'm not going to go into it in detail. Regional centers, problem of job creation. Economic analysis must be supported by market study and verifiable detail in the business plan. Now, this little buzzword, verifiable detail, oh my gosh, how important has this come? The government wants detail. Your little pie in the sky projections just aren't going to work anymore. They want to see the details. They want to see the specifics. Bottom line is we need verifiable detail. Government wants proof. Show me the jobs. Wait a second. I thought it was show me the money. Nah, show me the money is legal. The big deal here is show me the jobs, folks. Show me the jobs. So at the 829 stage, you better be ready to show that those jobs were created, because if you don't, and you've got a $200 million capital raise, that is a shocking number of jobs, folks, that has to be created. 10 jobs per investor, 200 million capital raise, 400 people, 10 jobs per investor. Jor, help me, I'm only immigration lawyer. Is that, what was that, 4,000 jobs minimum? 4,000 jobs you have to create. Is it 4,000 or 40,000? No, it's 4,000. I mean, gosh, that is a lot of jobs, folks. 10 jobs per $500,000. You better make sure that you have some very good projections on your job creation. I-526 processing times, we've gone through this already, so about 8 months. No premium processing. There was talk about what if approved, you adjust status in the United States, or your IVP, immigrant visa process abroad. What happens if it's denied? Your 526, you appeal to the AAO. What are the statistics of the AAO? Absolutely terrible. One of my friends got one approved. I haven't heard of anybody else. I am going to brag. I've never filed one with the AAO, so I can't claim to having had one denied. So, boy, maybe I'm just lucky. Let's touch wood. Okay, choosing a passive investment. Number 20, distinguishing characteristics, private or governmental REC, passive investment, RC, regional center, debt or equity models. Jor spoke about that a little bit. You know, what are the 526, 829 approvals? What's the track record? Money in escrow until minimum capital raise. So the question is your money, is your investment going into escrow, or is it going directly into the project? Or as we often see with a lot of them today, they say, well, okay, we're going to have 100 investors. Once we've got 26 in, at that point, we're going to release a certain amount of the capital out to the project. What is the exit strategy? So, you know, it's now 5 years later. How do we get our money back? How's the loan paid back? All the jobs were created. These are very, very important when choosing the investment. I, of course, as an immigration lawyer, will not advise you on how to choose an investment, but I will help you assess the risk factors from an immigration perspective, and then the financial security, rate of return issues, obviously critical issues that have to be investigated when choosing the particular project. It's not only choosing the regional center, but you're choosing the particular project. Jor, please share with us your words of wisdom on this all-important issue.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to kind of understand here. You know, debt versus equity. Let's get into that very, very quickly. The debt model is really a equity and a debt model. So your traditional EB-5 is where an investor invests into a company and receives some equity, limited liability company interest, limited partnership interest, stock, whatever it is. They receive that, and traditionally that company would use the money itself to engage in a project that was EB-5 approved. There's a variation of the equity model whereby that company may use a subsidiary, a wholly owned subsidiary, to engage in the EB-5 project. Now, in recent years, the debt model has dominated the marketplace, and the debt model is similar to that, except for the investors are, instead of investing in the company doing the actual project, they're typically investing in a special purpose vehicle, which is almost always a limited partnership and sometimes a limited liability company, you know, often seen in East Coast deals. And that company has no purpose other than to take the money that they've invested and gotten equity in, and then it makes the loan to the actual company that is the EB-5 project and the job-creating vehicle and enterprise. And that's why people call it the loan model. But in reality, both of them start the same way. Someone invests money, they get equity. With the loan model, it just means they now take that money and they loan it to something else.
Very helpful.
The other thing, and I'm not sure if I was supposed to talk about this in a previous slide or not already, or a future slide, I did want to mention that there's a lot of talk about at risk. And all day long I get calls from people saying, well, we keep hearing that people want to get paid back, but then how can we not, you know, how do we pay them back if there's a redemption? And everyone, of course, is on the money raising side, they're hoping that they never have to pay the money back. And on the other side, they're always wondering, how am I going to get paid back? Now, we have to understand that, unfortunately, this is a great program. USCIS is doing a good job trying to understand the program, trying to implement the program. But there are a couple of things that are practical realities to the program that maybe are not exactly what the program was supposed to be. One of them is at risk. It makes sense why the legislation and the regulations say that the investment has to be at risk. No one wants to give a green card to someone that's just going to put it in a bank and hold the money aside and have zero risk and zero impact on.
Hey, Joel, why not? The Australian program, the Canadian program, several other programs have it that way. Why do we have it at risk? Well, let me jump in here and tell you, this program basically evolved out of the old e-visa. And the e-visa requires that the money must be at risk such that you can lose all the money. And the concept, of course, here is that being able to lose your money and putting it at risk is better for job creation. And that is the government's logic of why it has to be at risk. But I rudely interrupted you.
No problem. But of course, I personally believe that the government has taken that a little bit too far. So, one of the things that has come up, for example, is that a person cannot guarantee return of money. So, if I borrow money from you and I say, I borrow money from you, I promise I'll pay it back, that's okay. That's called a loan. They're all right with that. That's at risk. But if I, for some reason, insert the words, I pay it back and I guarantee I will pay it back, my risk, your risk hasn't changed. My likelihood of defaulting is about the same, but for some reason, those magical words now scare the government into thinking, well, hold it, that may not be at risk anymore. But that's one of the tricky things that you got to play around with, and so long as you have the proper EB-5 professionals surrounding you, they'll be able to help you navigate kind of the nuances of how that language is supposed to come.
But you have to be very careful in drafting the documents to make sure that broad guaranteed redemption is generally disallowed. The third-party insurance is pretty much allowed. Jor, throwing one out to you, what if the investor ends up with a condo at the end of the business? Is that going to be permissible, yes or no?
It depends on how it's drafted. If the investor is essentially getting, a fair market return and that's being allocated to a condo, in that scenario, perhaps it would work. In most cases where someone says, hey, I'm investing, and at the end of 5 years, you get the condo, in general, that's not going to be acceptable because they don't think that that's at risk. Maybe you've traded the one risk of money for the risk of owning a condo. However, you've essentially bought something is their view.
Joel, very helpful, and thank you so much. I'm going to fast forward. I'm just watching the time here. I want to get all your questions answered, and we are going into the last 15 minutes of this show. So what I'm going to do is I kind of skipped source of funds and path of source of funds. I'll develop that a little bit more in the next program we do. I want to touch on some of the hot button issues, TEA, state designation letters. Not so much of a problem right now, more or less resolve these. Material changes in business plans. Oh my gosh, I can't even start emphasizing. I mentioned to you that there's been a lot of denials lately at the 526 and at the 829 stage. The denials inevitably say, oh, well, there was material change from what you originally promised until what you finally did. And, material change, the way they're interpreting it, it's almost like any change. Material means material. But the problem is that, just the smallest change can actually impact. Let's get real. In business plans, business people have to change their business plan. Government doesn't like this. Indirect job creation methodologies, oh my gosh. The problems that we've been having in tenant occupancy, February 17, the government came out with some new interpretation of tenant occupancy, which has really impacted about 60% of the program. And just very, very serious. We're hoping for better guidance on this, but the bottom line with that is, oh, well, you put up a shopping center, great. But you know what? If the jobs weren't in this shopping center, they were going to be in the next shopping center. So we don't think there's job creation here. Very, very serious problem. So you have to show that there was sort of 0 vacancy rate or 3% vacancy rate. And without this shopping center being built, there wouldn't have been the additional jobs. So a serious problem we have here with regard to tenant occupancy and the so-called job creation methodologies. Capital investment after job creation. We've got bridge loans, and we've tied these two together. Here's the problem where the shopping center is already being built, and then we retire the debt using EB-5 money, and we say, well, that created the jobs. But the problem is we try to count the construction jobs, and the construction's already finished. So how exactly did you create the jobs? So cause and effect between the investment and the job creation. Timelines and delays, we already spoke about that. The jobs have to be created within a limited period of time, and the project got delayed. So tenant occupancy, bridge loans, make sure that you explain in your original business plan that the plan is to retire the debt using EB-5 money, and then the government has said that it's going to be presentable. So I kind of went fast on those because I want to fly through these. 829 basics, I already went through this, show that your investment has been sustained for the full period of time, you didn't take the money out, that you created the jobs within a reasonable time. Who knows what that means? No material change. What are the statistics here? Well, the good news is I get the impression that the government tends to want to deny less 829s and be a little tougher at the front end. So we've got about 20% denial rate on the front end, 10% on the back end. I think we're going to see even higher denial rates on the front end, hopefully lower denial rates on the back end. So we have less 829 denials. Let's talk about family members, divorced spouses. What if they get divorced during the process? They can be okay. I'm talking about during this 21-month period. What if the kids age out? That can be a problem for us. Family members who never got CPR, conditional permanent resident, may be eligible as following to join. What if the principal dies or abandoned? There are procedures for the family to continue to remove the 829. Talking about travel issues can be confusing. They talk about the 829 receipt as being a travel document for a certain period of time. You can get temporary green card stamps in your passport to travel. There's the green card. That's what it looks like. It is finally green again. And, yep, that's the big one. It's all about the green card. What is a green card? The right to live and reside permanently in the United States. How do you maintain the green card? Well, that's a big one. You're supposed to live in the United States for at least 6 months, a year. There are certain situations where you can be out for more than 6 months. You can also apply for a re-entry permit. You know, parents are getting very ill. You want to go over and look after them. You don't exactly know how long you're going to be out, or you're assigned to work for an American company abroad and you don't really know. So you get permission to be out. When can I get my money back? Again, after the 829 has been approved and subject, of course, to the money being payable and there being money to, in fact, redeem. And as Jor explained, sometimes in a loan model it's a little bit simpler. In an equity model, who's going to want to buy your equity interest? It's not really a marketable security in most cases, so tougher to get your money back on the equity model. How long do I have to wait until naturalization? Remember, you count from the time of the conditional permanent resident. Count from the time of the conditional permanent resident. What if the 829 is denied? Yep, as long as the final order of deportation is not issued, then you can get a temporary green card stamp, which will allow you to continue to work. You can renew the application in a removal deportation proceeding. Burden of proof, preponderance of the evidence, administrative appeal to the BIA, also possible at this point. Federal court review, arguably you can go in before removal proceeding, arguably you can go in after removal proceedings, basically coming in under the APA, the American Administrative Procedures Act, just very generally. And then we have our question and answer session. So I'm sorry I went so fast. I'll go into some of those issues in more detail, but I know that most people can't concentrate for too long. There's our question and answers. There's Mr. Jor Law with his email address. Email him, jor@homierlaw.com. There's my email address. The truth is that picture's a few years old. I've got a little bit of gray in the beard right now, but I think you're allowed to use slightly old pictures when it comes to the internet, and that's Bernard at Wolfsdorf. Please go onto our Facebook account and like us. You can follow us on Twitter as well, get all the latest good news. And folks, let's go on to our questions here and make sure that we have our questions available. Not quite sure what happened to our questions. Where's our tech gentleman? There he is. There's our questions, and then he's clicking on to the questions. There they go. Oh my gosh, we've got a lot of questions. So I'm going to go through these questions. Are we here at the beginning? Probably need to get my reading glasses on to read these small print. What does Mr. Law feel that is allowed for a regional center to lower or rebate its subscription fee for a particular investor? This is a really good question, by the way. Jor, in some regional centers at this point, what they are doing is saying, all right, you know, there's an administrative fee of $45,000. However, when the 526 is approved, we will rebate $20,000 to you, and the implied idea is that this will be used to pay for the legal fees. What's your view on that arrangement, Mr. Law?
Luckily, that's one of the things that the SEC doesn't necessarily care that much about. If you're using the right exemptions in, you know, raising the securities, and you have that sort of provisions, so long as it's disclosed, that's okay.
Very good. Disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. Let's continue with some more questions. Very good questions. Here's a gentleman. What can be done about excessive I-526 processing times? We have a number that have been waiting for almost a year without any response. Yes, that's the story we have. Here's some good news, folks. I think once we get the tenant occupancy issue resolved, I anticipate we're going to see a flood of decisions. Hopefully they're all approvals. What can you do with the excessive waiting lines? Not a lot. You could hire a lawyer and file a mandamus lawsuit to force the government to act. I'm not sure the government, that'll work. Generally, my rule is the case must have been pending for at least a year beyond the normal processing times before I will take on a mandamus case and sue in federal district court. I also want to make sure we have a strong case. Here's some more. With excessive processing funds, projects on urgent need of funding, what are the pitfalls of breaking escrow early in the best interest of the project? Ooh, ouch. Ooh, ouch. Joe, I'm throwing that one at you. What happens if they decide to break escrow early because they're running out of money? How's that going to impact? I think we've got problems here if we do that. What do you say, Mr. Law?
There's definitely problems if you do that. You know, practically speaking, you may not be able to. If you've gotten a good escrow agent, there's no way for you to do that without essentially lying to the escrow agent. Most of them are going to say, you know, show me the I-526 or show me whatever the trigger is that you've agreed with the escrow agent and or the investor. And, you know, I suppose some of them, you know, especially the ones we do, we try to be, you know, reasonably make the process easier because sometimes it's hard to get 400 investors together to do something. So sometimes we try to make it a little bit easier for the company to do it. But if that company has one of those streamlined processes that says, hey, if we tell you it's been approved, you'll go ahead and release it even if we don't show you evidence, then, you know, it may mean that you have to commit fraud in order to do that. But practically speaking, with a proper escrow arrangement set up, you shouldn't even be allowed to do that.
Joel, I've got another question. If you can just take it quickly. What license are required? Series 7, SEC, or FINRA licenses?
To do what?
What licenses are required to provide financial advice as to specific projects or regional centers? What are we looking at? Is it a Series 7 or is it a FINRA license or Series 63 or whatever? What are the numbers?
It varies. I don't know what the numbers are. You know, we know our firm kind of knows the issues on what, you know, when the Investment Company Act comes into play, when the broker-dealer rules come into play, and how Investment Advisors Act comes into play. But typically, there are specialized attorneys that will help you set those up and take the licenses. The information is readily available online, but you're not, if you're brokering a transaction, if you're referring deals to a person and getting compensated for that, you'll need the broker-dealer license. If you're providing investment advice and guiding people on, you know, what they should be investing in, helping them essentially invest their money and manage their money, you need the investment advisor's license. You may end up needing both.
Joe, I'm going to give you a B on that answer. All the other answers have been A. I guess we've got to put that to Michael Gibson. He's answered that before more specifically. Hold that question for series number 3 on January the 8th. You're all going to be registered. I plan to get sold out. We've got a maximum of 501 people allowed. I want to get a sellout crowd for January 8th. So tell your friends, hey, folks, I'm not kidding. A lot of these programs cost $100, $200 for a webinar. This is a free webinar series. You have absolutely the top experts in every area answering your questions. So share the good news. Let's see if we can hit this 500 number for the next one. Let's go back to the question. Would you please tell me if an alien, I like the word foreign national, but presumably you're talking about the guys with little eyes on the end of their stalks? Sorry, Bernie, not funny. Would you please tell me if an alien from Mars, no wait, an alien, a person from another country who is overseas now but was undocumented can file for any kind of waiver to obtain his visa? Okay, here's the story, folks. I'm not going to go into general immigration, but if you've been illegally in the United States or unlawfully present for 180 days, when you leave, you're barred for 3 years. And if you've been without status for 1 year and you leave, you're barred for 10 years. In some cases that can be waiverable, but you need an anchor relative to be waived. And if you have left the United States, triggered the 1-year bar, and then re-entered through other than a border inspection process, it's a 10-year non-waiverable visa. Sorry, folks, I'm going to have to do a separate webinar on unlawful presence. Mr. Sir, I got to keep confidentiality. You better contact me individually about that case so I can advise you, because we're dealing now with the question of inadmissibility. Did you know that China is a communist country? Did you know that inadmissibility for being a member of the Communist Party is alive and well? Did you know that after all this process, people can be denied at the very end of the show because they were active members of the Communist Party? All of this stuff has to be addressed up front, and this is what the gentleman is asking. We have got an inadmissibility issue. I'm running at the time here. What is your view on payment? We've done that one. Licenses. We got that one. Subscription fees the same as admin fees. Yes. Can the source of funds be from the U.S.? Hey, that's from my client and good friend. Yes, the source of funds can be from the U.S. as long as it is lawfully earned. Doesn't have to come from abroad. Does the same weight line is true for all nationals, including Iranians, or is it just for Chinese? The problem that is emerging is for Chinese at this time. Iranians do not have a problem with the weight line, but that could change. At what point in the flow chart is the capital being put into the business? At what point in the flow chart is the capital being put in the business? Very good question, sir. Jor, go back to my flow chart. At what point? I discussed this very briefly. When is the capital released? Talk to me about, since you work on PPMs, what sort of provisions you see as to the capital release, which stage. Sometimes the capital is not even put into escrow. Discuss that point for me, Mr. Securities Lawyer.
Yeah, really it's dependent on the marketing and who can get away with it. In most deals, the investor will invest and the funds will be held in escrow, and typically the I-526 gets up. Upon approval of the I-526, then the funds are released from escrow, given to the company to use, and then they'll usually put it to use. However, some of our clients, for example, American Life, they're an extremely well-known regional center, the oldest one regional center, I believe.
Oldest continuously active one, correct, and I've done quite a few with them.
And,
the famous Mr. Henry Lehman.
Right, and they can get away with pretty much anything they want these days, and even then, it takes a little bit longer to sell their projects sometimes, but they get away with it. They are one of the ones that do not use escrow at all. We have a number of other clients that have personal relationships with the investors or some reputation in China, and they get away not using any escrow at all. There has been a disturbing trend in my eyes lately whereby some people are putting part of the proceeds into escrow and then having early release on the rest of the proceeds or early release on a portion of the proceeds. And I think that's a little bit problematic unless you have an extremely strong issuer, because what happens if your I-526 is denied and they've already put your money to use?
Great question, and we've seen problems with that in the past in some of the regional centers that have gone kind of belly up, and that's been a problem. Folks, we are now at 2 o'clock. You have just had 1.5 hours of EB-5. Average brain can only handle about an hour and a half. I've been talking too long. I'm going to be losing my voice. I've skipped a few topics, but that's just because I want to do a teaser and make sure that you all sign on January the 8th. Please register for Part 3 now. We look forward to having you all participate. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Look forward to the next one. We want to have a sold-out crowd. I also want to ask just a little favor. If you would be so kind, Bernard at Wolfsdorf, if you've got anything nice to say, send an email to bernard@wolfsdorf.com. If you've got anything not nice to say, send it to joel@homialaw.com, because he's the guy who's much better at handling criticism than I am. No, sorry, that's a bad joke. So any comments to Bernard at Wolfsdorf, and please keep them anonymous. We'd love to quote one or two nice things, and you can say how Jor Law was amazing and Bernie Wolfsdorf was absolutely terrible because he makes silly jokes, but he got you through an hour and a half of EB-5, and I got a few smiles and laughs along the way. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again on January the 8th, 2012 for Series 3 in our EB-5 program series webinar. Thank you so much, and don't forget, March 15th to 18th in Shanghai. Make your reservation now. We're going to see you at the biggest, best expo that's ever been held anywhere in the world ever. Gigantum, amazing. Thank you so much, folks.